Welcome, everyone. My name is Antonia Ibeziako, and I'm the Head of Education and Training for HPCA. And I do also head the NHS EDI in Project and Change Management Network, which is hosting today's webinar. So we are a voluntary collaborative of different people like yourselves from different NHS organizations who come together, and our mission is to create a project and change management profession that collectively represents a diverse society that all our NHS projects are designed to serve within the different NHS organizations. So one of the action plans for the NHS EDI network is to actually support project and change management career progression. And we mapped out 5 different areas. First of all, project management related apprenticeships, career development pathways, role model campaigns, learning and development options, and coaching and mentoring. We're going to be popping some things in the chat, some links to all these for you to go through them when you have a chance to. But before we start, can you in the chat network amongst each other? Just say hello, who you are, your job title, and the organization you work for, and that'll be brilliant to take it from there. Because one of the things we're trying to promote is for people to network and get to know each other, and that way you can be able to support yourselves as well, if need be. So today we have Cambridge Spark. We've got Cambridge Spark Group, 2 of them are here today with us to tell us a bit more about what they're doing with the NHS. Cambridge Spark is an education technology company that empowers corporate and government organizations to actually achieve their business objectives by equipping the workforce with essential digital transformation skills needed to thrive in the AI era. So they're kind of like working in, I can see if you put some things in the chat, that's brilliant. So they're kind of working in partnership with us, HPCA, the training provider, which has been pre-procured by NHS Salisbury under Health Education England and NHS Project Futures, respectively. These organizations have changed. So HE is now NHS England, and NHS Project Futures is now HPCA. So we have with us Abby Leachman, who is the head of partnership at Cambridge Spark. She's going to be in the background supporting her colleague. If there's any questions you want to pop into the chat, myself and Abby will be going through the questions. And Tilly Allen, who is the Training Solution Director. So I'm going to tell you a bit about Tilly because she's going to be the one presenting today. Tilly has over 14 years experience in the world of apprenticeships and professional development, and she's very passionate about supporting organizations to grow their internal capability and also to develop their talent pipeline through partnerships. She's currently working as the Training Solution Director of the NHS Hub and prides herself on providing exceptional consultation and customer experience. She's going to be talking to you today about digital skills, how they can be aligned to the NHS Competency Framework, and how Cambridge Spark is working with NHS to align these skills to help career pathways. So without further ado, I am going to hand over to Tilly, and I'll be busy putting things in the chat for you to use as for the resources. And just to let you know as well, if you haven't subscribed to HPCA, it's completely free, so we can keep you in the loop when we have free webinars and workshops like this. Our conference is coming up soon, and we also have a project in the pipeline that's been launched. It's the EDI Talent Time Banking campaign, where you can get support amongst peers regarding project management. So project management professionals give their time to mentor or coach underrepresented groups within this platform. So we're working in partnership with NHS England London talent team on this project. So it'd be a good one for you to have a look at as well. So we've got some training courses on the HPCA website, which are like free workshops for member organizations. I'm sure some of you on this call are member organizations, so I'll have to check our CRM to find out. But if you're not a member organization, you can also subscribe and attend free webinars and lunch and learns like this. So I'll hand over to Tilly. Take it away, Tilly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonia. Abby's got her hand up, so I'm going to ask if she needs to say something before I get started. Go on, Abby.
Yeah, I'm flying the slides. So Antonia, can you quickly make me a presenter, because I can't share my screen currently?
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll get started while that's being sorted. It's so nice to see you guys. Thanks for joining us today. I know that lunch breaks are very precious, so thanks for coming along. And good to see some people from Mid and South Essex on the call as well. I've literally just been in an insight session with the trust, so nice to see you. So yes, as Antonia said, I'm Tilly. I'm a training solutions director and the NHS hub lead at Cambridge Spark. I'm not sure we'll need the full hour today, but I also want to hear your thoughts and questions as we go through this session. I want it to be kind of interactive. So and also, you know, not as formal, although I am going to share some slides with you. Please do feel free to unmute yourself as we go through, ask questions, add them into the chat box. And today, as Antonia said, we are looking at the subject of aligning data and digital skills to the National Competency Framework and why the development of data and digital skills is so important. But before we do that, for those of you who might not be familiar with Cambridge Spark, it's an education technology company. We specialise in providing data and AI training solutions to the workforce. And actually, we are the only AI specialist training provider in the UK. And all of our products are designed to support workforce development when it comes to data and digital upskilling. And we work with a really broad industry sector, actually, but my team specifically support over 90 NHS organisations to develop their understanding of what training solutions are available to them and to support them in the deployment of those training solutions across the workforce. And I'm sure that you will all agree that data, the way that we use it, the decisions that we can make is only going to become more and more vital and important to how we work as a country across the world, but also in the NHS. So just to give a little bit of context, there is a huge gap at the moment when it comes to data and digital skills. There's a need for nearly 200,000 data specialist roles in the UK, and there's simply not enough people to fill them. And I think if we add another layer to that, for example, only 22% of females are in data professional roles. So there is a really clear need to develop these skills within organisations, and particularly within organisations like the NHS that support a whole country in terms of our health and making sure that the population health is looked after. Before we kind of go into that, I always think it's important to kind of talk about what these options are. One of the ways that we see our NHS trusts and individuals working for the NHS upskilling is through apprenticeships. These are one of the most popular avenues and one of the areas that will be signposted in the National Competency Framework, which I'll touch on a little bit later. But before we do that, I think it's worth explaining what an apprenticeship is. They are, in essence, professional development programmes. So they're designed not only to deliver knowledge and theory under a particular discipline or subject area, but individuals are required to demonstrate their use of that theory in a practical and meaningful sense as they go through the programme. And that's why they are so popular. At Cambridge Spark, for example, we deliver from level 3. So that's all in support of the kind of data literacy for the general population. So people that are working as administrators, technicians or coordinators, what I call the heart of an organisation, the people that drive it forward, and all the way through to level 7, which is our data science and AI apprenticeship, which is the equivalent of a master's. So gone are the days where apprenticeships are just for entry-level positions. They're quickly becoming seen as a way not only to develop essential skills within an organisation, but to retain the talent that is already in an organisation. And in order to facilitate the need for data skills, I think it's time to look internally to the staff that are already within NHS trusts and provide them with the opportunity to future-proof themselves, but also the business or organisation in terms of what they are able to do. So if we can move on to the next slide, please, Abby. Thank you. So apart from the obvious reasons as to why upskilling is important when it comes to data, there are some other reasons that apprenticeships are popular in the NHS. And what you can see on the screen are just kind of a handful of examples and stories of learners from Cambridge Spark and what they have been able to achieve. So there's a benefit to the organisation. And what you can see on the screen there, you mainly kind of in time saving. So what you can see are real examples of what our learners have managed to achieve. So for example, 182 hours worth of time saved over a year through someone being able to automate a report that used to take 3.5 hours to prepare. They managed to do that in under a minute. So that's 182 hours given back to that trust where they can do something meaningful with that time. And that's just one person in one department, in one organisation, and one thing that they were able to achieve. So you can imagine if this was consistent across organisations and across the workforce, the great things that would come out of it. It benefits individuals. So as individuals in the workforce, it's really important that people have the opportunity to future-proof themselves. Again, the use of data isn't going to go anywhere. And regardless of the role that you have, it's inevitable at some point within your working week that you're probably coming into contact with some kind of data. So it's important that people are able to understand the avenues that are available to them in order to future-proof themselves in their career. And actually, it goes deeper than that. So it also benefits communities as well. One of the examples that you can see on the screen there, our learner Rishi, who was on our level 4 data analyst programme, he actually worked on a project whilst he was on his apprenticeship. And the project was monitoring the success of in-person consultations versus remote consultations. And he was able to identify CO2 emissions being saved from going into the environment, miles travelled by patients, so making it much more inclusive of the individuals that they were able to treat as patients, and also be able to support the community in a much better way. So not only does it have a business impact, it has an individual impact, and on a wider scale, it has a community impact as well. We have loads of examples, by the way, and case studies across the NHS and healthcare organisations we work with of just what impact has been made by people. And these stories aren't unusual. This is something that we see quite regularly on our learners on the programmes that we have. If you can move on to the next screen, please, Abby. So before I kind of go into this, am I right in assuming that people will have heard of the National Competency Framework, are aware of what it's trying to achieve? I can't see anyone, so nods or thumbs up.
I was actually good. Sorry, it's Sam. I was going to query which National Competency Framework we're talking about, because there are so many out there with different aspects. So this is the data one you're talking about, yeah?
Correct.
Okay, that's
Absolutely.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's different skills for different types of people in digital. So.
Okay, yeah. So the one that we're talking about today is for data professionals in healthcare. It was launched back in October last year. It was commissioned by NHS England. And the idea is that it allows the workforce the opportunity to understand the pathways that are available to them when it comes to their own upskilling in terms of data and digital skills, but also a great resource for line managers and trusts in general, again, to align and provide consistency across the skills that are being developed in a workforce. And also when they're recruiting roles into a trust, making sure that job descriptions, for example, are all aligned and following a consistent pathway. We all know that there is a skills gap sometimes I think it's hard to then take the next step. What do we do to move that forward? How do we address that skills gap? And what do we instruct people in the workforce to do? So I think if we move on, thank you. So the Data National Competency Framework has identified that there are three main areas that are vital in terms of the skills that are required within the NHS. And they fall under data analysts, data science, and data engineering. So these are just kind of three of the columns. This is going to be developed as time goes on. So I know, for example, the next one that we'll be focused on is data literacy. And it's all about ensuring that the skills that are needed are available and that people in the organisation understand how they can access those skills. So before I move on, has anyone had a look at the data competency framework or had any experience of using it so far? I can see people shaking their heads. Okay, so I do recommend if you kind of Google it, you will find the framework. What it allows people to do at an individual level is input the competencies that they currently have, so the skills that they currently have within their role, and identify the point that they want to get to. So what do I need what skills do I need to develop in order to become a successful data analyst, or in order to become a successful data engineer, or be data literate in my role? And what it then does is identify the pathways that are available to that individual or to the workforce for them to develop those skills. So there are lots of training providers across the UK at the moment that are mapping their programs to the competencies that are identified within that framework. So individuals can go to a data academy, access the library of information that's available, and then enroll themselves onto one of those upskilling programs. And this will be a work in progress. This will be continuously added to as time goes on. We can move on to the next slide, please, Abby. Thank you. So one thing that's important for us, I think the word data can sometimes be a little bit scary as well. We come across lots of instances where people don't even think that they're working with data, and actually they're probably looking at it on a daily basis, whether that's through an Excel spreadsheet or whether that's through running a report, for example. But what we have done at Cambridge Spark is looked at those three pillars that have been identified in the competency framework. So the data analyst, the data science, and the data engineering as a starting point. And we have mapped over the apprenticeships that we deliver to make sure that we are fulfilling the skills that are required through our apprenticeship programs. What you can see on the screen now is the core curriculum for our level 4 data analyst apprenticeship, just to give you an example. The modules that you see on the screen, numbers 1 to 12, are the mandatory units that an individual would follow as part of this programme. And as I mentioned before, the reason that we see great success, so those examples of time saving, efficiency saving, is because learners are required to apply this knowledge in a day-to-day capacity. So they're required to demonstrate their use of this theory in a practical and meaningful sense, which is why we see that return on investment that we looked at earlier. I won't go through all of the curriculum with you now, but if anyone is interested in finding out more about the different levels, then we are obviously more than happy to have conversations with you about what that looks like and how it can support the workforce within the trust that you're working in. Abby, if you could just move on to the next slide for me. So just to give you an idea of the difference, the data engineering pillar that we saw on the competency framework, again, we have an apprenticeship that aligns to that one. And we also have a level 7 programme, which is the data science, which is also an apprenticeship delivered by Cambridge Spark. So the idea is that people can access ways in which they are able to develop themselves in order to become consistent in the way that they approach work, to formalize their learning so they know that they're doing something in the right way, and to be able to really contribute to the team and the department that they're working in. It also gives individuals the opportunity to retain themselves within an organisation, to be more inclusive to people that perhaps haven't had the opportunity to develop these skills previously. I'm sure we're all aware of, you know, the huge discrepancy in terms of data skills when it comes to women, for example. There are much fewer women in data science roles than there are men. But perhaps they haven't had the opportunity to develop those skills through their career because they might be they might have childcare responsibilities or other caring responsibilities. What these programs do is allow people who may not have had that opportunity to go to university or to develop those skills in the workplace an opportunity to do so whilst they are at work. I'm going to pause for a second before we go on to the next bits of information. Does anyone have any questions at all about the information shared so far, or any thoughts about how this is working within the trust, the organisation that they're working in? Fabienne.
Yeah, it's really helpful to kind of think about the different pathways and also the skills gap. And I think in different professions, in different contexts, I'm quite new to my organisation, so I don't think I can speak about what's happened here, but in other places, because by background I'm a trained clinical psychologist, like there's a real emphasis on kind of keeping you within your respective field and not necessarily seeing how there are overlaps or like the value of kind of broadening the skills that you have. So I'm thinking about that in terms of like actual kind of defined career paths and the inflexibility within that. But also I wonder if there is something about like the people, when they look at you as a woman, maybe even think about your ethnic identity, they think about your age, they think about like lots of other characteristics, if they're kind of saying, well, you're probably not going to be interested, and then lots of other people in your environment might not be interested themselves or find it a bit overwhelming. So those opportunities to kind of cross-fertilize or learn from other people are a bit limited if you're only working with colleagues that are kind of trained in the same way as you. So that was what it was making me think about.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point. There aren't a huge amount of role models, I think, when it comes to people from more diverse backgrounds. There is, I think, a bit of a stigma attached to when you get to that kind of higher level and who is deemed appropriate to work in those roles because of the experience they have or haven't had. And one thing that I find really interesting, we did a webinar on International Women's Day all around kind of data and digital skills. And with the use of AI becoming more prevalent, particularly in kind of healthcare, where I think actually it has a really positive, can have a really positive impact. But again, it's still a term that AI makes people feel nervous, because all we hear in the media are stories of how it goes wrong, and why it's kind of dangerous, which, you know, we understand that there are risks attached to it. But from our level 7 learners that are on the data science and AI program, we see huge advancements in what they are able to do by using those skills. But when you think about something like AI, it's only as good as the information that someone's putting into it, right? And at the moment, the information tends to be put in by white males of a certain age. And so it is biased in terms of the information that it's giving us. So another reason why it's so important that we have people who can see a pathway to becoming that person and having a much more diverse group of people that are working with data and AI. Has anyone else had any experiences of that, where you're kind of working in an organisation and you feel that there's a bit of a barrier when it comes to what you want to try and do with data skills or digital skills? Or I think someone's hands up.
Hi, okay, I had a question, but to your other question, which you just now asked, yes, I did have experience because being in the nursing field, we are quite what do you say, challenged, where we have to, where as a whole, as general, people, we are judged, to be honest. We are judged, saying that, oh, you only have clinical skills, you don't have that experience, you won't have that knowledge. And if we do want to also learn, get exposed to it, give us that opportunity, there will be like a hassle or a kind of a small debate which won't be shown directly, but it'll be like, oh, okay, fine. Do you want to? Will you be able to? You might not say directly to us that, oh, you're a nurse, so I don't think you can do it. But it will be, oh, you have lots in your hands. It goes always around, and you understand through the words that they don't actually want to support you. Experience, have met it, have seen it, and that's where we have to fight our way, being a woman also. Saying that, oh, you have a kid, I don't think you'll be able to do it. When you said it, well said, that's what we come across, being difficult, having kids, family at home. Yeah, those are some of the challenges, some of the barriers. Being in an IT world, it's more of a male dominating environment, and we have to kind of fight our way to get into it and show what we can do. So yeah, that's my experience to where I've come from. But still, I still have to fight. In spite of you being in that role, you have to somehow voice out, and it's difficult for other people to actually hear your voice, or you're just being ignored and just pushed back. The question that I wanted to ask about this apprenticeship is, does it have a time frame, like to how, or like, when you have to finish it off, or it's as, I don't know if this question is relevant to it, but then
no, absolutely, of course, yes. It's an open forum, so all questions are welcome. And to your first point, yes, we talk to lots of people that are working in kind of clinical roles, working as nurses, for example, who have been told that there's no point in them upskilling. But actually, there is a huge point in upskilling, and nurses in particular, come into contact with lots of data. And one of the examples we had most recently was we came across a trust where there were 4 registered nurses who were all inputting information into an Excel spreadsheet. And they had to then run a report on that Excel spreadsheet. And it was taking something like 40 hours a week across those nurses for them to do this. So that's 40 hours where time was being taken away from them, when actually, if they had the skills in order to do that in a more effective and efficient way, imagine what else they could have done with those 40 hours. So it isn't an uncommon problem. In terms of your question, we deliver lots of different training solutions, by the way, at Cambridge Spark. Apprenticeships are just kind of one arm of that. The reason I think they're so popular in the NHS is they're funded by this thing called the apprenticeship levy. So there's no cost to an individual or a department, which is always a bonus. I think, unfortunately, sometimes people just aren't aware that they're there. So there are timeframes against them. So, for example, Cambridge Spark deliver the Level 4 Data Analyst programme in a 14-month practical learning period. But the reason why they are quite long in duration is that you have to have the time to embed that learning and be able to kind of apply that learning in a practical sense. But again, if anyone has any specific questions around the programmes themselves and the detail of that, I'm more than happy to answer that or take that offline. Teo, you've got your hand up. You've been waiting very patiently.
Thank you very much, Tilly. My contribution is pretty much to underscore your point around apprenticeships. I happen to be my second year of a level 7 apprenticeship, not in data or in digital. It's more of senior leadership, and it has an MBA attached to it. I was the very first in my whole group, so there was no process for processing people who were wanting to do apprenticeship. So there was a lot of questions about why, how, whose budget is it? Because usually training comes from department budgets and all that. So pretty much had to prepare a new playbook for me to be able to do it, because I think that, as you've said, awareness amongst managers around apprenticeship and how applicable it is to NHS staff. In certain professions like nursing, it's where I know, because I've met nurses on my program, but in generic NHS world, in management, it's not known about enough. And I think there's a lot more effort that needs to be made to raise awareness about apprenticeships.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about the National Competency Framework is that it is kind of elevating that and taking it to a wider audience. So whether that's at an individual level or whether that's at a kind of trust level, it's about giving people the information that they need in order for them to make an informed decision about their own career, and for kind of a wider trust level, giving the people that are kind of running that trust the information that they need to develop the skills that are essential to the success of it. How are you finding your apprenticeship, Teo?
Fabulous, fantastic. It's because I've done postgraduate studies before. This is a lot better because you belong to a cohort that is from different industries, from different parts. Even if you're from healthcare, it's different from the NHS Leadership Academy, for instance, because we're all groupthink there because we're all NHS. Here you can have industry, you can have a cohort that is so diverse and varied, and it's usually smaller than a regular university cohort, because then you have an opportunity to really debate your ideas and learn and practice. I think one of the benefits is you actually unlike most courses where you take time off to go do your own thing, your management is involved in the process. You have even some supervision at work, which means that you bring the work back straight away on a day-to-day basis. And one of the outputs is actually to develop things like business cases better, etc. So you actually are delivering to an NHS priority and bringing it back, much like a technician will have to learn their apprenticeship, learning the trade. You are learning the trade as being an expert in the NHS. So definitely I'm an advocate for it, having gone through it myself.
Thank you. That's really good to hear. And yeah, as you've kind of pointed out, it's that application piece. You're almost forced to use the information. And I'm sure we've all been on kind of training courses where you receive great information. It's all exciting. But then you've forgotten about it 2 weeks later because you haven't had the need or requirement to use it. And so the apprenticeships make sure that you are embedding that learning as you go through. And actually, I really liked your point, Teo, about engaging with other people. I think we certainly find on our programs, NHS learners like to engage with the wider community. So people from different organisations, and network with them and learn how other organisations do stuff. But actually, what we find is that most people learn from the people in the NHS that are using data, because the data is so varied in the NHS. It's not just about one particular thing. It covers so much. So yeah, lots of our learners learn from our NHS individuals as well. Thank you for that. Have we got any questions in the chat, please? Oh, no, we haven't got anything.
No questions in the chat.
No worries. I would encourage anyone on this call who might be interested in just kind of having a look and seeing what it does, to have a look at the National Competency Framework. It really is a helpful tool for people. And as I said, it will only become bigger and develop further as time goes on. As I said, the next ones that are going to be focusing on is data literacy, which I think is a big piece across the NHS. We deliver a level 3 data citizen programme. And it, again, coming back to that point of this word data, the level 3 data citizen programme, we primarily see people that are working in support functions. So they don't even think that they're using data, but actually they're probably the biggest users of data in an organisation. And if we can get that kind of level and that broad range of people understanding how to use data better, it then kind of infiltrates throughout the organization, and everyone then becomes a data user in a meaningful and more empowering way. We will share the slides, and we can share some links to the programs if anyone wants to kind of delve into them a little bit deeper. If anyone does want to have individual conversations, I'm always more than happy to do that. At Cambridge Spark, we're not about trying to get loads of people onto apprenticeship programs. It's about educating individuals and workforces as to what is there for them. It's important that people are able to make the right decision about their own development, but also the right decision at an organisational level as well. So myself and my team are always happy to meet with people, have those conversations, and we can also do things like what we call insight sessions. As I said, we've just done one at Mid and South Essex, actually, where we can kind of talk to a group of people about what is available to them when it comes to data upskilling. There's no obligation for anyone to kind of enroll onto programs. It's just more around education. Sam.
Sorry, who organised that, please? Because it's obviously bypassed us. The apprenticeship team, right? Sorry, because I'm thinking of an insight day, because we're setting up a digital academy in line with our EPR programme, and data is one of the modules I want people to be able to do. So yeah, okay, I'll go back to the apprenticeship team. Okay, thanks.
It's no worries, not at all. Does anyone else have anything they want to share, have any questions around the information that we've gone through today, or anything else generally about the framework or data skills? Antonia, is there anything that you wanted to add?
I was going to say, is it okay for us to share your email with the people on the call if they want to reach out to you?
Absolutely, I'll put it in the chat now.
Thank you.
No
if they
problem.
have any questions, because they might come up with further questions later on after the session, and so they need to find out more. Yeah, thank you.
No problem at all. There we go. You can contact me on that email address.
Thank you.
Unless anyone else has anything else they want to add, we've got 20 minutes remaining. So, Antonia, are you going to fill that up, or are we going to give people time back? What's the?
Have you got any events or webinars coming up based on data? Say, for instance, a hackathon or anything that people can attend to, get more learning experience on digital information?
Abby's got her hand up, and she's probably the best person to answer that question as well.
Okay.
There's lots of things at the moment. I did want to add to this. There's a few links I'll share through Antonia afterwards in terms of other groups and networks in relation to data and AI and diversity and inclusion. I think could be quite useful for everyone here. I think like the Shuri network, if anyone's heard of that. Health Data Research UK run a Black internship programme, which is really positively successful year on year. There's also a series of webinars running at the moment. I'm just reading my notes, so I'm looking away. It's the Women in DDAT actually webinar series, which I think it's the Southwest Digital Skills Network are running. I'll send that across as well, so everyone's got that if you want to have a look into those too. In terms of events we're doing, there's a few projects that I can't yet announce, which I'm excited about, that we're looking to work with in relation to AFA and some other organisations. But in terms of upcoming sessions, we work with the NHS Leadership Academy as well. So some of our programmes, like our Level 3 and our Level 4 DBA, which is Digital Business Analyst, they have the the Edward Jenner Leadership Programme attached to them that you can take in tandem. They're launching version 3 of the Edward Jenner Programme now, and we'll be doing a bit of an insight session, I believe, at the end of June. I'm yet to set it up, but once that's ready and going, we'll be doing a collaborative one, and I'll send it through to Antonia. So if you're interested, we'll send that out as well. I guess other than that, once we've got some of these projects we're working on set up, we'd love to do another session on one of these with Antonia, and I'm sure we can get that set up later on in the year. Yeah, which I'm excited, but I can't say anything yet because obviously not everything has been confirmed, but I'll let you know.
Brilliant. Thank you, Abby. I was just going to open the floor and find out from people, what sorts of supports are there in your organizations for development for the ever-changing systems? Is there any particular kind of supports you have in your organizations for your development and your learning? Because we know that AI is taking over. Digital skills are evolving and people are upskilling and reskilling. What supports do you have in your organization? This is just an open floor for people to talk and share. Anyone?
Apart from the use of the apprenticeship levy, as and when, one of my team actually went on the Cambridge Spark meeting yesterday about the data and AI one. So I've just sent her the link. She went, that's the one I went to yesterday. Oh, okay. She's that's another nurse that's interested in data and AI. So I'm pushing her towards the apprenticeship levy. But then unfortunately, the apprenticeship, sometimes they stick to the known organisations. They don't like to go outside of that. So they have a university they're associated with. They don't necessarily go outside, and that's our problem, I think. And yeah, I've done an apprenticeship, so I didn't love the apprenticeship side. Loved the course. Sorry, I have to be honest. It was the organisation it was associated with. That's why I put that in the comments. But it is a good way of getting the practical skills and getting the theoretical skills as well and marrying them together. And that's what's missing in the workforce at the minute. So I don't mean to hog this, but this is why we're doing a digital and data academy, so we can get our EPR up and running when we get there. So we're looking at soft skills as well as the data science skills for band 7s and band 8 nurses and AHPs, because they're the ones using the systems. They need to be able to understand why they're putting stuff in and how to get it out again, and how they can improve services from that. So that's where we're going at the moment in MSc.
Brilliant, thank you.
That's sorry, Antonia, I was just going to say, I think that's a really interesting point, Sam, particularly when we're talking about technical programs. So obviously when it comes to data analytics and data science, it is technical, so the programs have to be of a technical nature. But you mentioned there about the softer skills, and one of the things, again, that I think works really well with apprenticeships is, with most providers, you will get someone who supports you to go through that program. At Cambridge Spark, we actually give 2 people, because we know that they need to have a different skill set. So a data mentor is a technical expert who helps you with all that stuff. But we also have what we call a learner success coach, and all providers will have a version of this. And what they do as part of the process is support people to develop those kind of softer skills. So when it comes to things like presentation skills or communication skills, you have that as well as the data side of it. So you've got that kind of balance of your development as you go through the process.
Awesome, thank you.
That's good.
Anybody else wants to share? Oh, Abby's got a hand up. Go on, Abby.
I thought it might be quite interesting, actually. I was speaking with our head of curriculum the other day about, so we have a few thousand people across our programs. I was interested to actually see what the stats were when looking at diversity, because data and AI is obviously quite a traditionally, I guess, biased towards white men in most cases. And from some of the stats I pulled across, about 41% of all the learners on our programs are actually female, which I thought was quite almost 50-50. However, the more technical you get, that tends to drop a little bit. We also found that people aged 30 to 49 made up about 62% of the people on our programs. 46% were from non-English, Welsh, Scottish, British backgrounds. And about 10% had various different disabilities that were on programs as well. So it's just interesting to see those stats. And also to kind of, for us, we're making like goals to balance that even more moving forward. So what can we do to make that better and more inclusive. And I kind of wanted to ask, open up to the floor a little bit, because we're a small group, but what are some ways that you have made training more accessible for people in your organisations, or what have you done to make training more accessible in the data and AI space? Or are there things you could suggest for training providers like us to make things more accessible? So open it up to the floor if anyone's got any suggestions or thoughts. Over to you then, Antonia.
Can you put into it? Larissa.
I've got Tyler's hand up.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't see the hand. Go.
Yeah, just now.
Oh, sorry.
Just now, Abby. It's one of the barriers I find, because obviously as a manager, people sometimes you find that when you're trying to process training through the L&D and the HR, they always want to push you to the knowledge pool in the NHS. So there's still a challenge in opening up that portal for where training is provided from, and a process to make sure that it's standard. Obviously, the NHS wants to make sure that there is some quality criteria to training providers, etc. But certainly the knowledge pool and the fact that in other previous organizations, they have their own limitations as they have a portal, in the civil service also has that kind of approach as well, is that you only have to go, majorly have to go through that, otherwise you'll have to raise exceptional and actually have to jump through more hoops to get training approved. I think that is certainly one area that still needs to be cracked, in the sense that how we access the right kind of digital is new, AI is new. There's nothing on the knowledge pool that is delivering to it, because I've had to go to the Oxford AI program for something I wanted to do. And I know how many hoops I had to fight to get a program like that. So I think that needs to be, we need a mind share on how we approach that challenge.
Totally agree with you, yeah. One of the major barriers as well is getting line management approval, because if you want to go on a training and your line manager says no, nobody else can, supersede that, and you're stuck. That's a huge barrier for a lot of people. I've come across that as a major issue, and they usually use the term work. We need you to do work. But regardless of the fact that apprenticeship doesn't take you away from your work, because you're actually using the skills in your work. So yeah, totally agree with you. I've got Melanie, and then I've got Tino. Melanie, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So in our trust, we are still growing up. So I'm the only digital lead nurse in the trust. There's no chief information or CNIO or nothing. We don't have a tree as yet built, and we are in the process of recruiting a CNIO finally. So I'm kind of alone with another digital midwife, but she's concentrating on the project of Badgenet being introduced. We already have the EPR system. We have a lot of systems in our trust. So at the moment, alongside with other external digital nurse, we have recruited for 18 months. We're trying to get a data to see the competency, the percentage of competency that the nurses, AHP, whoever is using the system has. It's quite difficult because this is something new. We do have e-learnings. E-learning, like in our portal in iAspire, where we advise. We have introduced, like, if any new staff comes in, it'll be in a package where they have to once they sign into this portal, it automatically appears and they have to complete it. And all this e-learning is it's not just read on, it's hands-on. You will work alongside with it. You have to click. So other than just getting bored and just brushing through everything, you cannot go ahead with a page, and you have to play along with it. You have to click along with it, and in the end, there is there's like a mandatory marks 80% that you have to meet. So this is something that we have introduced, because after all, it's patient safety. Not only patient safety, but staff safety also, what we are entering in both the ways. So this is something that newly we have not newly introduced, but a mandatory introduction, because before it was just brushed through e-learning and then get the access, but you can't get the access into the system unless you're not certified with it. This is what we are doing in our trust. But as Teo said, totally agree with it, and also Abby, you and Antonia are being getting approval, new digital coming on. We have barriers such as, the most senior nurses or other healthcare professionals who are working, for them it's a barrier because it's difficult for them to get to it. And these are some of the barriers, the language barriers, I'm not saying age is a problem, they are wise and all, but it is a barrier for them to, to get something newly acquainted with it. And with the IT people saying, oh, they have a phone, they can use a phone, so why can't they use a system? It's different. You can't generalize it. It's not as easy as a phone. Yes, they do have a phone, but there are more to have being in a system, more to understand, more to what you're putting into the data, to understand why you're putting it in, or what you're putting. So that digital literacy we're trying to bring in. I have spoken to my other chief nurses, to the other top management, that we have to bring in this digital literacy, the digital competency for the nurses, for the other healthcare professional. It's a bit difficult, it's a bit challenging because I have no one with me at the moment. But I believe once we build that team of us, we can get there. So this is what I can share at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. I think I had Tino. Your hand was up before.
Yes, but everything's sort of been summed up. It was the barriers, line management, definitely. Sometimes that's the issue, but on the other side as well, like I'm trying to support someone to go for training, but you start hearing things like we don't have a budget, everything is on freeze. And then also, I think with especially apprenticeships, it's very difficult, like Tayo said earlier. No one seems to understand whose budget is going to come from or what the process is. And then that thing around how is this going to benefit the team? How is this going to benefit the NHS? Just gets in the way all the time, especially when your role doesn't fully integrate with what's being offered.
It is a really common challenge that we face when we're speaking to individuals who are looking to upskill. And then, as you've kind of pointed out, there is a barrier sometimes when it comes to the line manager. I genuinely believe it's due to a lack of understanding as to how it all kind of works. I think people automatically jump to the assumption that they're going to be losing somebody for a day a week out of their business, which they simply can't afford. So it is all about kind of educating people, and why we do sessions like this. So, you guys can go away and have those conversations. But to that point, if anyone, I have run sessions in the past just for line managers, so that they can ask those questions that are more maybe from a management perspective and try and alleviate some of their concerns when it comes to this kind of training. So again, if anyone does have a line manager who has those questions, who they're finding it really difficult to try and get through to, I'm always happy to have those conversations. There is no, as I said, obligation for people to enroll onto the programme, but it is about educating individuals as to why and how this all fits together.
Thank you very much, Tilly. That's really helpful. Have we got any more questions? If we don't have any more questions, I would stop the recording.
I'm just adding something into the chat. It's we wrote this recently. It's how to convince your manager to fund your data and AI training. It's not the conclusive, this is gonna be the answer to everything, but could offer some insight and a little bit of a guide on some of the common barriers that some of you are facing. I think again this is across industry, but worth a look if any of you are interested, because it is a common problem we find as well with a lot of people we speak to.
Thank you very much, everyone. So we're going to send the slides anyway, and that'll be helpful. And any other links that Abby and Tilly would share across, I'll pass it on to yourselves. So if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe, because it helps us to send these materials to you. Usually when we send to people who are not subscribed to HPCA, the trust firewalls might block the emails from getting across to you. So it'd be helpful if you subscribe. So thank you very much, and have a great day. I'll give you your 2 minutes back.
Thanks, everyone.
Lovely to meet you all.
Thanks for having us. It was nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.